American media typically doesn't seem to have the strongest relationship with mechs. Over the years, there have been a lot of attempts to dip into this idea, though for the most part, these end up falling flat commercially, and are only kept alive by a niche cult audience. I think a lot of mech stuff in this part of the world struggles to find its footing, unsure of whether to cater to children or adults, uncertain if the mechs should be more realistic vehicles or superhero-type characters in the form of a robot. Maybe there are several instances of successful film that use a mech-related identity as a minor concept, a couple examples being The Matrix, Alien, or maybe Avatar. Not the Airbender, the blue people. In this case, very often these are not only minor points to the overall media, but also maybe minor in size compared to the typically giant robot of Japanese fame. And speaking of the Japanese origin point of mecha in general, it's probably even worth noting that the more popular American franchises running off the idea very heavily borrowed from stuff coming out of that little island anyways. As far as I can tell, the most successful mech intellectual property over here is with Transformers. And I think we all know its origin point being a Hasbro rebrand of the Diaclone toy line by the Takara company. Past the medium of film, cartoons, and children's toys, probably the most popular mech in the States takes its name as BattleTech. This one is a tabletop war game with a whole ton of tie-in novels and video games. But even then it struggles to keep its head above water and, again, has an origin point being built out of the designs already created from Japanese shows. As an aside, I do think it's sorta interesting the more popular, or I guess common, stateside mecha stuff seems to really roll with the idea of the robot being its own singular character. You know, the Iron Giant, Transformers. While Bionicle was imported, it was wildly popular here, I guess basically saving the entire LEGO brand from bankruptcy even. I'm sure there's a lot of furrowed brows over the mention of this, but I figure the strange biomechanical world of Bionicle is at least mech adjacent in some fashion. Same as the popularity of tiny power suits. That seems to be a thing here too. The Iron Man suit. Best guess I can come up with is that culturally we don't like teamwork. The idea of a giant robot war machine and a pilot as two separate things requiring teamwork befuddles our mindset of rugged individualism. That is until Pacific Rim came around. If you're not familiar, this is an absolutely epic live-action sci-fi tale about mechs punching kaijus. It ended up being one of the most successful American productions based on the big bot idea, and is pretty beloved. Until you watch the sequel, but we don't like to talk about that one. Anyways, that's a really long-winded way to bring up a movie that never made it out of the gate, that seemed to have a lot in common with Pacific Rim and supposedly maybe even inspired it in some ways. Back in 2008, an article by Variety spoke of a new Michael Dougherty movie entering production named Calling All Robots. This one was aimed to be a joint venture between Walt Disney Pictures and a performance capture animation company called Image Movers. Apparently Disney had seen the impressive animation capabilities with things like Beowulf, Monster House, and the Polar Express, and decided they wanted a slice of that pie too. This became Image Movers Digital, who worked out of some converted aircraft hangars, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, this new animation medium was very expensive to produce. Image Movers Digital created their first film, which was A Christmas Carol, which was another retelling of the classic Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, to an estimated $50 to $100 million loss, which supposedly caused the then Walt Disney Studio Motion Pictures Group president Mark Zoradi to resign. IMD kept chugging along regardless. They were putting in work on a Beatles Yellow Submarine remake, a Roger Rabbit sequel, another holiday film, this time The Nutcracker, and of course the previously mentioned Calling All Robots. But before the Robo film, they managed to complete a different science fiction, Mars Needs Moms, in 2011. I never watched this one, and I don't recall hearing much about it at the time, though I think I was definitely out of the age demographic for children's movies at that point. At a cursory glance, the plot seems to be pretty similar to the Jimmy Neutron movie that I did see in my youth. Aliens capture parents, kids save the day. Maybe I didn't see this one for a good reason though. It bombed. Mars Needs Moms bombed so bad, it not only caused the closure of the joint Disney Image Movers venture, but also managed to become historically known as the biggest financial loss for a Disney-branded film ever, apparently. When adjusted for inflation, it was the fourth largest box office failure in history. Bad. And that's why we never got Calling All Robots. What do we know about it though? Well, it actually did get something like 3 years of production. There are articles, like the one from 2008 by AnimationMagazine.net, that say the concept was brought together by Michael Dougherty, Breen Burns, and Simeon Wilkins. There's some concept art floating around and even a fully voiced storyboard uploaded to YouTube in 2024 from David's Doodles Coleman.
I already lost one son. I don't need another.
This storyboard seems to be showing us an inter-family conflict where a young boy is piloting a mech around a garage. I kinda assume the mechanical beast was created by the older men who are hanging around, the main one being his grandpa. They have a bit of back and forth over the morality of fighting and killing these kaijus, and discuss how the boy's father died against them. Grandpa blames himself, and a certain general character who's off-screen. You can also check out some early pitch storyboards from Simeon Wilkins' portfolio website, Robot Operation Manuals. A lot of really cool artwork showing the bots, the kaiju both living and taxidermied into a museum, mech garages and junkyards, a retro futuristic city with egghead scientists, action sequences of battles between the two in various environments over the sea or across exploding cityscapes. I really love the early to mid-century inspiration that's gone into the mechanicals themselves. The blocky, retro sci-fi, heavily bolted metal stuff. I feel like we don't see that enough. I do especially also like the Sharkmouth fighter jet nose paint added onto the chest piece. That's just so cool. Plot-wise, I couldn't manage to track down any version of the script, but both the Cancelled Movies wiki page and the Cancelled Movies fandom site seem to feature the same blurb. This setting was to be 1958. The main character, a young boy named Ray, wants to avenge his father who was lost in battle to these giant monsters. Ray's grandfather takes concern over the boy's anger, trying to teach him a sense of morality. At some point, Ray befriends a Yuriko, and together they discover that the kaiju attacks were under the control of a General Parker, who's the corrupt head of the military robot program. Apparently, he'd been using technology that he created to enrage the monsters so that he and his troops could fight them off and become championed as heroes and saviors. He gets caught and dethroned before the story ends with peace between the humans and the creatures. When asked more about Calling All Robots back in 2008 by Variety, Dougherty had said that it intends to, quote, tell a story that's a throwback to old Godzilla movies, I grew up watching Godzilla movies. This film is very much rooted in those movies. And while calling all robots never did manage to come fully to fruition, I'm sure it was heavily remembered, as he did get his chance with Kaiju not once but twice, firstly in 2019 with Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and again in 2021 with Godzilla vs. Kong. On the other hand, being less into the Kaiju and more into the mech aspect, people like me are going to have to continue waiting. And that's all I've got for today. If you enjoy talking about mech media and want to keep up with me, feel free to hit the subscription button. Usually I talk about mecha video games. However, today I decided to do something a little different and talk about this canceled film. Thanks.